The Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 6:30 p.m. This is the special board meeting being held on August 20th, 2020. We have a quorum with all members being present except Ms. Williams. At this time, we will open the public hearing to discuss budget and proposed tax rate for 2021 school year at 6:30. We will first have a presentation.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Randall, and our public. I would like to open the public hearing for our 2020-21 school year budget. This evening we have three things on the agenda. The first would be to look at and review the three budgets that are required to have board adoption officially. Those are the general fund budget, the debt service fund budget, and the child nutrition budget. And then we're also going to talk about the proposed two-part tax rate and the considerations surrounding it. I'll begin with the general fund. We're proposing a balanced budget at $337,010,761. Revenues and expenditures are equal. The 2021 revenues in large part are made up of property tax revenues, and I'd like to start with some information about our 2020 value study. Values were certified on July 20th, 2020. For budgeting, we're using net taxable value of $16.485 billion. Those are approved by the ARB, and they're freeze adjusted values, plus $384.655 million at 95% of the valuation they gave us, and those are also freeze adjusted values, but those are still under ARB review. Our total value for budgeting is $16,869,912,777. Increase in our property values over the last year used for budgeting is 9.26%. Increases in years prior to that have been about 7.5%, about 3.5%, and about 5.5% each of those 3 years. The calculation of our M&O revenues is presented there on the screen. We're using a 0.9191 cent per $100 valuation tax rate, and then frozen taxes of $19.678 million. Gross property taxes are roughly $174.9 million. We're using a 98.5% collection rate, and so net property, M&O property tax revenue is roughly $172.1 million. State funding is the other very large portion of our general fund budget. State per capita apportionment revenue is right at $15.6 million. Foundation school program revenue is estimated at $124 million. And so our total state funding in the general fund budget is $139,662,730. We're basing this on an attendance growth rate over last year of 5.63%. This is a snapshot of our general fund expenditure budgets by category. You'll see that payroll costs total $282.4 million roughly. That would be payroll and benefits. Professional and contracted costs are about $29.1 million. Supplies and materials at $17.5 million. And then other costs, $6.3 million, and capital outlay at $1.6 for your total of $337.01 million. Highlights of the general fund, these we refer to as our big ticket items. Salaries are budgeted at $232.384 million. Benefits are at $50 million. $1,082,000 roughly for property and liability insurance costs. $9.2 million for utilities, $1.68 million for fuel, $1.84 million for Fort Bend Central Appraisal District costs, as well as our tax assessor collector fees. We have budgeted funds for accelerated instruction in compliance with House Bill 5 and funds for legislative advocacy in compliance with House Bill 1495. Again, we're proposing a balanced budget at a little over $337 million. The tax rate for the general fund, as I mentioned earlier, is 0.9191, so about 92 cents. It's made up of three components. A Tier 1 rate, our maximum compressed rate, is 0.8691. Tier 2 enrichment pennies, which are carried forward from the prior year, are 4 cents. And then we have an additional 1 cent of Tier 2 House Bill 3 allowance. It's one more penny that requires unanimous vote of the board in order to access. Moving on to the debt service fund. We have revenues and sources of funds of $78.237 million. The bulk of that would be from tax revenues, estimated at a little over $66 million, and $550,000 for delinquent taxes, penalties, and interest. We're budgeting accrued, capitalized, and investment interest at $11 million, $1.1 million in state aid, which is hold harmless funds, and then potentially a small drawdown of that fund's fund balance at $420,000. Our expenditures are projected to be $78.657 million. Principal and interest, which is the largest portion of that, is roughly $78.6 million, and then debt service fees we're budgeting at $85,000. The debt service tax rate we need in order to fund that budget is at 35 cents. And that concludes the debt service piece. Moving on to child nutrition, which is the third budget that requires official board adoption. Funds in that, revenues in that fund are generated from breakfast and lunch sales as well as federal reimbursements. Total revenues are at $16.672 million, and we're also proposing a balanced budget in this fund. Here's a breakdown of the expenditure categories. Again, payroll and benefit costs are a large portion of that at about $7.4 million. The other large category would be supplies and materials, which would be your paper products, food costs, and the like. That's at $8.9 million, roughly. So total expenditures are $16,671,749. Moving on to the tax rate. We have a two-part tax rate to be adopted, made up of the maintenance and operations tax rate component and also an interest and sinking fund component. We did publish our voter approval rate, which was referred to as a rollback rate before, roughly $1.38. And that's the rate that we cannot exceed. And we're proposing a two-part tax rate of $1.2691, which is roughly $1.27. The M&O rate, which I talked about before, 0.9191, and the interest and sinking rate of 35 cents. And that concludes the information I have for the hearing.
Any comments from the board?
I have one. The current budget for the year we're just ending is roughly $318 million, if I remember correctly, for the
Right.
general fund.
Right.
And we're going to increase that to $337 million.
Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Is that because of inflation and then salary increases and those kinds of?
Yes, that's a really good answer. A lot of it has to do with salary costs. We do have raises incorporated in the budget, but the bulk of the increase would be for new positions. We do have a new campus opening. So, of course, salaries and benefits, the related benefits to those new positions. And then we've got some COVID-19 expenses in there that we're trying to cover this next year. And then somewhat some inflation. But with additional students, we also have additional supply costs for instruction. We've also got some additional software for virtual learning. As I'm talking, I'm thinking about all the different things that we've got in here.
We're a growing district, and I had someone ask me, why aren't we flatlining the budget because of the potential economic collapse or because of the COVID impact? And I think that's something that the public might not understand, is that we have an increase in salaries, we have new campuses coming online, and from if I remember right, 80 to 84% of the general fund is just for salaries and benefits.
Yes.
For the employees.
Yes. Perfect. That's, yeah, and of course with the new campuses and the student growth, I believe we're around 1,500 potentially new students as well.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's not easy.
You're welcome. Lots of moving parts.
Ms. Bosick, do we have any comments from the public?
We had none sign up.
Okay, we will close the public hearing at 6:41. And the meeting is adjourned. It is 6:42.